I want to talk about coaching for your soul. That's when you're taking what you have learned about yourself, for example, in a soul blueprint. I think I'll just show you one. Here's a soul blueprint. Let me just put a little tag over the person's name to give them some privacy. But when I do work in your soul record, I'm in there working away, looking for a whole lot of information. And what I send to you is a PDF. This one I think was 22 pages. So they're usually between 20 and 30 pages, depending on what I'm finding out in there about your soul record. But I send it to you, and it's, you can print it out. I usually encourage people to print it out, read it twice, and then come up with a bunch of questions. So this is the very start. Before you can even do soul coaching, you need to know who you are at soul level. And so there's a lot of explaining on in this PDF that I sent you. But I wanted to just give you a concrete example of the kind of information that you can learn about yourself. Like, for example, in this soul blueprint, this particular client has divine male energy. And that doesn't have anything to do with gender or your sex. It just has to do with the kind of energy that your soul has. And so, for example, with divine male energy, the kinds of things that resonate with you would be things like connection, spiritual balance, truth, presence, leading by example, being heart-centered, supportive, inclusive, intuitive, orderly, benevolent, strong, focused, responsible, action-oriented, encouraging, detached under challenge, compassionate, appreciative, generous, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. It's quite different than if you have a feminine, divine feminine soul, right? The list of qualities would be a bit different. And then you learn, or I take a look at what your soul's energy centers are. And what this means, it's the kind of energy that the soul had absorbed in its inception, which I believe to be in the Big Bang, and it depends on the location of where that energy became an aggregate or a conglomerate of energies, that makes up the soul. And some people have one, and some people have two, a primary energy center and then a secondary energy center. And if you have one, great, it's pretty straightforward. And if you have two, it's the blending of these two that make up your energy center. You can't say, well, I'm a percentage of one and percentage of the other, and somehow they're separate. They're not. They operate together. So, like with this particular client, the energy centers here were divine order and divine wisdom. So it's not either or sometimes I'm divine order and sometimes I'm divine wisdom. This one it was 80-20. But it's the combination of them. But in order to be able to explain it well, like for example, a soul that has a primary energy center of divine order, they bring balance and harmony, beauty, art, law, order, perfection, and peace within themselves, each other, and with our environment. They're creative, they're artistic, they're organized, they have beautifully organized spaces, they costume themselves with an eye for detail, they're great project managers and business managers. They're great travelers. Anything that has to do with, managing, organizing, prioritizing, building, they're very, very good at. They have an innate sense of fairness and karma. They have a great sense of balance and consequence. They have they're great. They're creations. They have deliberate creations that are in balance is their great gift. So if you're a person who has this energy center, you're somebody who is creative, but you're creative in a particular way, right? So very creative, but in a very particular way. So this one, the creations are deliberate. They're not necessarily, intuitive, or there's a level of spontaneity with them. No, not for this one, right? This one has a plan. Right, so think architect, right? You're not going to build a building without a great plan and great detail, and it's usually going to be executed to the plan. So but they're also, highly emotional, intense, And these kinds of extreme situations make them incredibly uncomfortable. So they don't work well in chaos and drama. So somebody who had made choices in their life where they think that they're being energized by chaos and drama, and they have this as their energy center, they're naturally out of alignment by the choices that they have been making. And once they go into alignment, then things are easy. And actually their divine gifts are able to be shared way beyond themselves and with other people. So somebody who has this, right, there's always a shadow side to the energy centers, you know? So I just talked about a little bit of this one for divine order. But sometimes people of this divine order energy center, their love of beauty and perfectionism can actually spiral out of control, and they will be obsessed about the organization aspect of their life or of their project and never actually get something accomplished because they're busy organizing. Now, this would be somebody who they draw up a great plan for their building or for their home or for their, you know, their interior design or their project, and they never actually do it. What they do is they refine the plan, and then there's revision 2, and then they refine the plan, and there's revision 3, and then they refine the plan, or maybe throw it out and try again because it's not quite perfect yet enough. You see, so they end up, their quest ends up being a quest for perfection, for the result, than actually ever getting in there and then taking action, making things happen, and then adjusting as you go along, right? Which would actually probably serve them quite better. Now, somebody who had divine wisdom, now this particular client has 80-20. So there's like, most of it's divine order with a little bit of, with, you know, about 20% drop of wisdom. This person best operates when they have both, right, in this situation. So for wisdom, it's this oneness with all is really their great gift. You know, they're able to understand the universality of what goes on in the world, particularly the physical world. So, you know, we don't confuse wisdom with truth, right? Truth is subjective, because then when you learn something else, right, the truth is now different. Wisdom is based in the long terms of experience and knowing, right? So wisdom would come from knowledge rather than from necessarily just from what you consider to be the truth. And, you know, wisdom's universal. So these people that have wisdom as their main part of their energy center are really here to help the rest of us understand how to operate in universal truth and to be in alignment. You know, how to break free from illusions in society, for example. They're very thoughtful, they're introspective, they're insightful, they have an excellent ability to listen. So you might not think they're paying attention, but what they're doing is they're deeply listening, and they're able to deeply listen and put things into context in a much larger perspective than the average person. And this is why you know, people that have this energy center as is part of their major soul characteristic, ability, and value have this sort of ability as an incarnate being, right? So they have this. It's like it's an uncommon common sense. You know, so we talk about common sense. You're in common sense. What is common sense? It's a cognitive ability. When the brain experiences something and then it has the next experience, it can recall or cognate on what it had learned before. Some people do not have great cognitive ability, and these are the people who say, "Oh my God, they don't have any common sense." But they keep doing the same stupid thing over and over again. Well, these people with the divine wisdom energy center in their soul have extraordinarily, unusually powerful common sense that supersedes, because they are operating from a place of wisdom, rather than just simple truth or experience or even knowledge. It's wisdom. So sometimes, you know, there is, like I said before, there's a shadow side, right? So sometimes for these people, they get very frustrated when they are around others that, you know, they might think they're stupid, you know, like they're just unintelligent. So they have a little bit of trouble being around and working with people that are not on the same level with them. You know, I think we've probably heard this about Einstein, how he couldn't talk to anybody but his cousin. I think that's why he got married to his cousin or something like this. Don't quote me. Okay, but, you know, there's like little snippets of Einstein coming in where he just couldn't handle being around people that weren't intellectually at his level. So this particular one, this particular client also had a soul specialization, which sort of fine tunes their soul purpose a little bit more than somebody who doesn't have one, and not many have one. But this one was very interesting because the soul specialization is what was called Master of Design. So they're structural specialists. So remember, we've got this person has got male divine energy, has wisdom and order as their divine energy centers, has a specialization of Master of Design. These are the engineers of the soul world, right? They're engineering types, chemical engineers, physicists, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, software engineers, architects, people who do heavy-duty construction and are building buildings or machinery that builds industrial complexes. They might build complex aerospace things, maybe spaceships, you know. So, you know, they're drawn to the physical world, creating in a physical way, and they are all about systems. And you know, so here we go with the systems, the order, the perfectionism, right? So if you've ever met somebody who's a rocket scientist, when they say we're leaving at 5, they're not kidding. No matter what, they're leaving at 5. Because lives could be lost if they don't leave at 5 o'clock, right? So this particular client had this. So then I take a look at soul group, right? So you know how sometimes you meet someone and you think, I know this person. I know this person from somewhere. I haven't ever met them before. I don't recognize their face or their name, but you know, you meet them the first time or you sit next to them and you're like, something about this one, you know. And this is what we're talking about sometimes when people are talking about their soulmate or soul tribe or somebody that's in their soul group. And that is what's happening, is you meet somebody that's in your soul group. And so for this particular client, it was very, very interesting because this particular client soul originated in a group that in my methodology of doing this work is called a Hadarian. But they have an underlay of a whole totally different group that they kind of liked too, you know. So the Hadarian people with this soul group called Hadarian, this place was a place of unconditional love. So they come from a place that experienced unconditional love, right? And this is what they try to bring to their human experience, is unconditional love, which is innate. It's just natural for them. They don't have to work at it. So sometimes they struggle here in this incarnation because that doesn't exist here, you know, naturally. People have to work for unconditional love. They have to prove it. They have to earn it. They got to work hard at it. Then they make mistakes because they're human, you know. So the earthlings don't really have that naturally, but the Hadarians do. So they come to experience, you know, their incarnation as a human, but they come with this energy. And so sometimes they're really disappointed when they don't find what they think is natural from their world. So it gives you an idea of what some of the challenges are that you might be experiencing when you come from a particular soul group. So these people are incredibly loving souls, have a lot of difficulty with loving relationship at the physical level, you know, which we're talking about in the third dimension. because they really don't like the ideas of codependency and all of that, right? So unconditional loving doesn't mean I love you and you love me back. It means I love you and it doesn't matter if you love me back. Now, just scan your world. How many people do you know that think like that, right? Not many, right? Usually love is a deal. I love you, you love me. It's very rare to find, unconditional love. And everyone talks about it, and they use the word kind of flippantly, and even your dog, right, gets upset if they don't get the biscuit on time, right? So everyone's like, oh, the dog, unconditional love. Okay. Yeah, until they don't get the biscuit, right? So this particular group, struggles with that. They're also very fun. They're spontaneous, but they're impatient, right? So they thrive on instant gratification. They leap into intense relationships very quickly, right? Because they're unconditional loving beings. I love you, right? 5 minutes after you met. So sometimes they can feel, a little misplaced. Now, this person has an underlay, which means that this person's soul, with that energy, that Hadarian energy, which they loved, started hanging around, shall we say, people from another soul group, whether they were incarnated or not. And this particular client started hanging out with a group called Blueprint Deliverers. And when they do this, they meet the Hadarian meets the Blueprint Deliverer, right? Or Joe starts hanging out with Paul, prefers Paul's everything, his setup, his lifestyle, his friends, how he thinks, how he manifests what's going on, really likes that better than what he had going on in his realm. And so he starts to adopt and adapt to the energy that's in the other group. And that's what happened with this particular client. And this particular group that he was attracted to are the kind that they get in the trenches, right? They're very physical. And for this particular combination of qualities, abilities, and values, right? Divine order, the wisdom, the Hadarian group, male, divine masculine characteristics, it makes sense that this person would rather be with engineers that build things in the physical world and not to remain in the more, world of, this unconditional loving energy where we don't really think about building anything. We're just floating around and loving everybody, right? So it wasn't quite suitable once he had gotten a whiff of being in the physical world. So it can change, so you can have a soul group, and it's good to know what it is. But usually somebody who's had a long journey already and maybe even had a bunch of past lives may choose to hang out in a different soul group and take on those characteristics. And I can see that in their soul record. It's visible in the soul record, what had happened here. We can also take a look at things like your soul vibrational, your rate, how many spirit guides you have that are helping you, how many kind of helper guides. But here's the part that in the soul record that people are usually pretty astounded by. Like in this one, I took a look also at the primary life lesson. In this particular soul blueprint, this particular client's primary life lesson is receiving. So, learning to receive and to practice receiving. Now remember, this is somebody who has a soul group of unconditional love. Always giving, 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 giving. And so the soul this time said, okay, I've been giving a whole lot, as my natural state of being. What's it like to receive? And so this soul had decided before it was incarnated, right, before it became a human, before the soul dropped the spirit into a baby, shall we say, and was birthed, it had already decided, I'm going to once again, or maybe for the first time, try out being human, and I want to learn what it's like to be able to be open to receive. So this is the experience, right, that this particular client is here to do, to receive. And sometimes that might be difficult. So they have to work on it and practice it, and then work on it some more. What I also can see in the soul blueprint is the energetic blocks and restrictions that are present in the soul record. So what does this mean? So this means that normally we want to be a clear channel up to, in alignment, right? Up to our soul, in alignment with our soul. Getting our energy from universal source energy, not from other people, right? So we're really independent in that way. And sometimes because of the choices that we've made, we've taken ourselves out of alignment with our soul. And that misalignment creates a block or restriction. A block is a block. We can't get what it is that we need. We can't manifest what it is that we need. We can't even tap into the essence of who we are because we're blocked. And sometimes we're restricted. It's like, well, we get some of it, but we don't get all of it. So you might get a little bit of what you want, but you're never going to get the whole thing because of this particular restriction, energetic blocks and restrictions. So this is a big part of what I do when I'm looking in the soul record for information. So once I can figure it out, and I just go in there and I get a list. They have it or they don't. They got this, they don't. There's curses, there's not. There's spells, there's not. There's anger spirits, there's not. There's negative energy or not. There's ghosts and negative beings hanging out, there's not. There's soul facets lost or there's not. I mean, I can go through the whole thing. There's tears in their different chakra areas that are manifesting in particular ways. So I gather every single bit of information I can. Then I got to figure out which goes with which. And then in which lifetime, whether it's in the present life or whether it's in a past life. And if it's in a past life, which past life? And in that past life, did they present as male or female? What happened? What went on? What was the lesson? What was the choice that was made? What was the consequence? Did they make the choice themselves, or was it something that happened to them? What's the problem? That's the hardest part for me as a soul coach, to go in and get that kind of information. That is very hard to do. But I'm good at it, right? So I can get it. I'll just give you an example here. So let me see if I can give you one that, here we go. Let me give you this one. So this one has several. I think this one has 4 or 5 blocks or restrictions that we ended up having to deal with, right? And that's the coaching part. So I'm saying about coaching for your soul. Once we know this, then we have to apply it and change the patterning, create the new choices so that you get back into alignment. Understand how you're the creator of your own contentment, and also creating a creator of your own future. What you're making, the decisions that you're making today and tomorrow and right now are going to show up, today, tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So the closer those are in alignment, the easier that journey is going to be. So let me give you an example on this one. So here's one where I went in. This client was actually a male. Past life. This happened in a past life when this particular soul chose to incarnate as a female. Now it's in the present, it's incarnated as a male, but it had previously incarnated as a female. Their anger spears. There's an illusion, and there's a tear at the second chakra. So that information I get, and then I have to go in and I go for the story. And so in this case, for this particular client, the story was 4 lifetimes ago, you were a female who discovered that your lover was having an affair with one of your friends. And there were signs of the affair, but you chose to ignore them, hoping they would prove false with time. This illusion that everything was okay as long as you ignored the signs was generated from your desire to believe that it's better to be safe than sorry. So this energy of it's better to be safe than sorry is what had informed the previous lifetime, right? So You felt you would be sorry if you challenged your lover and preferred to be safe in the partnership and ignore the signs of infidelity. So you just didn't want to believe it. You also thought if you just didn't cause any trouble, that all would be okay and work out well for you. When you caught them together in person, you had no choice but to face the truth. And once you accepted that the affair was true, you became extremely angry at having been lied to, having been betrayed, taken advantage of, and you felt foolish for trusting these two when they were signs of betrayal already. And to make matters worse, your lover was truly in love with this other person. Your anger was so intense that it created anger spears that were projected at the lover for misleading you and also at the friend who targeted your lover for herself. So in this moment, in this past life, you experienced a tear at the second chakra that may cause you in the present life to have trouble manifesting at the physical level. Maybe you experience like sexual dysfunction or low sexual energy. You could have financial issues. And in the past life experience, your choice to ignore the signs of the infidelity, the betrayal, and the loss of a loved one has caused you to also express intense anger and not trust relationships going forward, right? So this is something that had happened in the past, and this person had created the anger spears and the intense anger, which caused the tear in their own chakra that ended up manifesting itself in a particular way in the current life. And in the current life, the way that it manifests itself is in the physical world. Problem with money, problem with relationships, low sexual energy, things like this, right? So it was very specific. It's very specific in the Akashic record, in your soul record, about what had happened there, right? So that's an example of the kind of information, the kind of detail. So this person now would, when we were working on this, understood that they had this inability to trust, particularly in personal relationships, and had no idea where this was coming from. You know, their loving partners constantly had to go through hoops, constantly had to prove their affection and their love, constantly, had to do something in order to feel worthy. And this comes from a soul whose soul group is unconditional love. Right? So they were because of this experience that they had had. So you see, it's a mixed bag here, right? And this is why every single person is incredibly different, because not only from the characteristics and the abilities and the values that they have based on their divine gender, their divine gifts or energy centers, their soul group, but also the lesson that they're here to learn, that they have chosen, and the experiences and the choices that they have made in past lives that continued forward because they weren't resolved previously. And so this work then for this particular client was, we do a 21-day process where they're also working on clearing this energy, which is wonderful. Their intention is to clear the energy, and that's great. But the real work begins when you're saying, okay, I got this. Now let's take a look at my life and the patterns and the choices that I'm making, and what do I need to change up? Who's in my life that shouldn't be in my life? What kind of things do I tolerate that really aren't in my best interest? Am I even in the right career? Who am I surrounding myself with? What am I telling myself? What am I naturally gifted at that I've been thinking is no big deal, but it is a big deal. I could be making money from it. I could be saving lives from it. I could be helping others. I could be just making my own life better. So that's where the coaching comes in, where coaching is really a wonderful tool. Because you can do so much, but it's helpful to have another person that's supporting you, that you check in with, that can guide you along the way, that can listen without sort of any criticism or judgment, right? When you start telling your friends and your family, right, everybody has an opinion. So this is really the beauty, of having a coach. And when I'm talking about coaching for your soul, it's the application of what you now know to your current life. So, for example, I have another client that I'm working with, and she's applying who she is at soul level to her business. And it's working out beautifully because she was trying to manifest certain things for herself where her energy center and her great gift and her source of power here on the planet is manifesting that not for herself, but holding the vessel to allow others to manifest that for themselves. And once she made the shift, everything started coming her way. People, the income stream, the satisfaction of having found, how she's best in service and all of that. So, okay, so that's, I just gave you a really good example of what you can learn in your soul record, what a soul blueprint looks like, the benefits of coaching. And if you have any questions that you want to ask me, now's the time. If you're interested in this kind of work, and you want to work with me, or you want to talk about, working with me on this, go ahead and book a call with me. Just book a free call with me. You can select a date and time that work for you on my online calendar. There's probably a booking button on Facebook up on the top banner to the left. You can always just send me a message, send me a private message, say, wow, that sounds really cool, Lisa. How do I book a call with you so that we can talk about my situation and how this could help me? And then I can let you know. Okay?